Hello, you multi-malted mateys. A great one, that. Love that malt mention. Thank you, Whiskey Finder, for that mention, introducing Ralphie Review 1057 extras, extra content, extra perspective, extra opinion, extra experience shared, extra content. And in this, I am simply going to continue immediately on from my previous review 1057, where I reviewed Ardnamurchan the Midgie, which is a very young single malt. I put it no more than 6 or 7 years old, but it's an outstanding example of how a really young whisky can be very, very good and give you an experience, a single malt experience, which you simply cannot get from older, more matured whiskies. I'm going to start by saying that there's a bifurcation. A bifurcation means a splitting. There's a split going on in Scotch whisky at the moment. Excuse me a second. I need a wee sip of this whisky. I've mentioned it. Oh. I've mentioned it briefly in the past, but I want to go a little bit deeper in this bifurcation, in that there are whisky companies who are producing their spirit and maturing it as economically as possible. Now, this means they are cutting costs as much as they possibly can to produce the minimum legal requirement for what is identifiable as Scotch whisky. You tend to find them in the big brands, and they go as far as they can without disrupting and diluting the actual identifiable signature of the brand. It is primarily big whisky makers that do this because they're compelled to do so, because more often than not, the companies are listed in the stock market and the shareholders, the majority of whom are the big companies like Vanguard, BlackRock and State Street, to name just a few of them. They issue demands on these companies. Now, these can be practical expediency demands on how to streamline and improve their business by using modern technology, or they can be political demands that they place in the company, that they have got to green themselves. In other words, spend an awful lot of money, which can cost the company a fortune, but not actually have much of a benefit, but they're seen to be doing the right thing. Also, big companies are reliant on marketing and marketing is increasingly in the modern age incredibly expensive and incredibly inefficient, because it has a challenger in social media, which has the opportunity to be simply more honest and forthright and sharing of information in a way that disrupts traditional marketing narratives, and at times makes fun of them. And why not? As they're to be made fun of, because sometimes they just basically get ridiculous. But there's a reason for that. It's because they have to appeal to consumers. Consumers want to be entertained. Consumers go to Disneyland. They're on Netflix. They want bright colours. They want flashy messages. They have a short attention span because they spend too much time flicking through Instagram and TikTok, and they want to be entertained. They want to have their attention grabbed by a novelty, and therefore big company marketing schemes are increasingly pandering to this because they have to. They use brighter colours in their boxes. They're more cartoonish, they're more blingy, they're more primary colours. They're becoming more almost fluorescent colours, because you have to do that basically like a what these things that you used to kind of go to, a pachinko parlor if you happen to be in Japan. Lots of flashing lights, lots of buzzing and bleeps and bells and noises, like an amusement arcade. Because the modern market for capturing the consumer's attention is increasingly an arcade. It's an arcade place. station with pachinko machines and distractions and bright flashes that say, look at me, I've got your attention, I want to sell you something. And when you have this scrunching up, and it's global now, of attention grabbing cliches which have the same tone. It's like if you go to Las Vegas, it doesn't matter which casino you walk into in the Strip, they all sound the same. They have the same machines, basically. They have the same script. They have no clocks. They have no windows. You're there to be distracted and lose. Don't even bother looking at your watch anymore. You don't need to know the time. Just keep sitting and spending your money. Blackjack, roulette, they're all there. Are the puggy machines. Just keep feeding your coins into the puggy machines. This is how ultimately people are on such low dopamine levels that they have no patience. They need to be triggered to spend, and this affects whiskey. So the big companies, they have there's classic signatures in there, and it's so sad to see them get diminished. But this is why they're chill filtering, and this is why they are adding caramel colourant to dumb down the complexity and the frightening components of the whiskey, which would otherwise drive people away from the product, because people don't want flavour, they want convenience. And fortunately, this is leading to a situation in Scotland, Scotch whisky distillation, which is genuinely exciting. And it's called the Great Bifurcation, the Great Division, the divide now between, generally, not always, big corporations who have got no choice but to appeal to the consumer. And you'll know this when they are deep discounting in November, which is why you never buy at any other time of the year except November. But even when you do buy them, you pour your dram because you got it at half price. Hey, I've had this recently with Talisker Skye, and you're just disappointed. And you're disappointed because immediately the brain gives you feedback to that Talisker you had in the 1990s, the 10-year-old 1990s, early 2000 version, which was so full of flavour. It was huge. It had the volume of intensity. It had that big peat reek. It had that pepperiness. There was nothing compromised about it. It wasn't compromised in the production of the spirit. It wasn't compromised in the quality of the casks. It wasn't compromised in excessive chill filtration. It is now. You know it. We know it. But you can't just lift up a glass of real good quality flavour and it hits you and you enjoy it all at once. We need to prepare ourselves for it. We need to practice. We need to persevere with that practice over time. Then we'll get it. Then, inevitably, like a musician learning to play the guitar, a painter learning to paint, a sculptor learning to carve and understand the fabric of stone, we get it, we arrive there, and then we find the modern generation of small distilleries, and they are not all the same. Far from it. There are some small Scotch whisky distilleries, recent arrivals, and frankly, unfortunately, they're not so great. And even worse, the people who are in charge of them, in my opinion, do not do a good job because they don't really know what they're doing. Because they honestly think that Scotch whisky is the finest, the best, it's this, it's amazing, it's all one, and aren't you lucky to come to our distillery and worship us? You know, get over it, distillers, please. Think times are changing. We have seen distilleries now close down. I will comment on that. First of all, in my Patreon channel, I have a live stream coming up, Bothy Live. It lasts 2 hours, once a month on a Wednesday. Subscribers get access to that because it keeps it manageable. Also, you get access to Discord and other extras, additional Patreon-only videos. And in these videos, I'm talking about this situation in greater depth. I'm talking about the fact that there's new distilleries. They're not that long, but if they don't know, they know who to ask, they know who to turn to. They are not listed in the stock market. They have private owners, they may have angel investors, they may have had community funding, they may have had just basically a bank get involved. Always risky, by the way. Because when a bank controls your loan, the bank controls your business, not you. And the bank will do things that make them money, irrespective of the consequence to your business. Understand that. Waterford in Ireland, I found out the hard way. But I'm talking about that in my Patreon channel. Here you have a classic example of a distillery that is producing a bottle of whiskey that a corporate multinational would not bottle because they don't have enough customers who are interested. But they're dealing in a far greater volume, and they're dealing with a global market. In France, they would get this. Totally understand. In Germany, in Denmark, in Sweden, totally understand this. But if you're in South America, for example, where it's a warmer climate, you're not going to have the slow release. At a higher temperature, the whiskey will open up much faster. And therefore, if you're really wanting to get most out of this, you probably have to cool it down, use a cooler glass out the freezer, even put, heaven help us, sit your glass in a tumbler of ice to keep it cooler for longer. And this is why in South American countries you have cachaça, you have rum, because those spirits are designed to work best in those environments. So you get rum works differently, and more often than not they're had as long drinks, or if they're going to be sipped neat, they're partnered immediately with a big glass of water or fresh coconut juice or sugarcane squeezed, which is just fabulous. Now, I'm rambling slightly, so I'm going to bring back this extras into focus by saying be aware of the bifurcation, the great divide. The younger distilleries have now been operating 6, 7, maybe 8 years, or in Ardnamurchan's case, they're now hitting 10 years. They are now hitting their stride. The quality of their distillate is essential, along with the quality of the casks. If they're going to make economies, they make economies by not advertising, knowing they don't need to, because social media is their friend. We are their marketing. We are their messengers, because what we're recommending is stuff that we've bought ourselves because it was worth buying for an experienced palate. And this is what you have with Ardnamurchan Midgie. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look at my Ralphie Review 1057, in which I give a long and rambling and frequently distracted review of Ardnamurchan Midgie, because it's well worth it. And I'm doing so now because other reviewers are focusing on the 10-year-old. But I'll come to the 10-year-old next year in 2025. Here in 2000, at the tail end of 2024, I'm focusing on the diversity of quality with whiskey. And I am challenging the assumption that an older whiskey with greater age is better because people are charging more to sell it. Not true. It's not true. With young whiskey, you can get a phenomenal complexity in which you're also getting great value for money because it's young spirit. The cask hasn't influenced it so much. But, see, with older whiskey, you're only getting value for money if the spirit has been a richly distilled, substantial spirit which holds its own over time, with loads of savoury notes and sour notes and and sensation intensity, which you can only get from a lower alcoholic yield spirit that costs more with the grain per tonne of grain because you're getting better quality grain. And I'm saying that, see your local barley, see your organic. That's the sort of whisky that is going to mature more successfully over time, so long as the cask is good. But heaven help you if you get a bad cask. If a bad cask is not helping the whisky over time, the only resort the producers have is to transfer to a better cask or a younger empty cask, which they can do perfectly legally because it's an empty cask, to try and rejuvenate an older whisky in the same way they rejuvenate a whisky when they give it finishes. Red wine finishes, white wine finishes, Madeira finishes, Marsala finishes, port finishes. They're just pepping up the whisky a little bit. And by the way, they can do that to old whiskies with high age statements and not even have to declare it. They don't have to say anything about it. All they have to do is stick to the minimum legal requirements, and the rest is taken entirely on trust. You've got to decide, maltmates, which distilleries, which brands, which makers of whisky are you going to choose to trust when you pay that premium for higher aged, more expensive, supposedly better whisky. Because it may be better, perceived to be better, because of the three cliches that you get in old whiskies: leather bookcases, old books, and armchairs and leathery notes, and just that stuff, that dunnagey note which may or may not be there. It's so much is down to the luck of the cask and its ability to literally physically hold that liquor for all these years without too much evaporating. So when you're paying 15, 20, 25, 50,000 pounds a bottle, and you get that fancy bottle in a fancy case, and it's all very artistic, you got to ask yourself one very simple question: have I actually got the experience of palate to know what I really bought, or have I just bought some bling? I'm going to conclude by saying that I've got a friend, well, he's a brother of a friend, who is a watchmaker. His hobby is making watches, and he makes components for professional watchmakers. Such is the quality and precision of his work. He is a watch collector, but he doesn't collect Rolex. He doesn't collect Breitling. He doesn't collect Tag Heuer. He doesn't collect high street, high-end label designer watches, because he holds them in low regard. They're there for consumers. He only buys watches that a watchmaker would really understand the technology in it, the quality of the workmanship, and he tends to buy watches at international auction. That's where he buys watches, because as a watchmaker himself, an enthusiast, a passionista, he knows what real quality is. And our challenge as whiskey drinkers is to not just presume we already know what real quality whiskey is, but to discover and be surprised after decades of drinking whiskey that we're still learning, and we're just waiting to be surprised and delighted by something unexpected, which is going to set our senses on fire with a positive result. And we shouldn't be looking necessarily at these older age statement expensive whiskies, because we can find them in younger whiskies, particularly when we don't allow age prejudice to creep into our personal narrative. I'll leave it at that. Enough said. Absolutely sparkling. Thanks for watching.